in line with some of the talks in the previous few weeks, I really wanted to continue with that theme for this evening. Because if you missed out for the last few weeks, don't worry, there are recordings and you can get access to those nice and easily. They can even be texted through to you. Those talks were exceptional. I think Brendan, who is doing such a great job with us this evening, when he spoke very clearly on the results that were directly attributable to the strategies, to the people, to the culture of an environment like this, and directly because of this very room. We got to hear, I think before that, we got to hear from Guy talking about the results and his attitude towards, what can you do to create memories, relationships and experiences. And then another great example we heard recently was Samantha from last week, who's actually Samantha and Ash are overseas this week donating their time to a charity. I think it's building homes of some kind. I need to be more clear with that. But when Sam spoke last week, she made a real difference with her messaging around if you get your profile right on LinkedIn, and you're not just like one of the masses and just spend your time investing in this is what I do and this is how good I am, look at all the buildings I can jump over in one single bound. If you had a different way of approaching professional social media, and particularly a summary in your profile, you have a much better way of sharing your values and not just what you do. And if you share with what you do, it gets you pigeonholed in a box. People make a whole range of assumptions and they go next and they don't realise the potential that they've just walked past. So some really interesting talks over the last few weeks I'd encourage you to get hold of. And in light of that, and in light of the thing we've got here this evening, I wanted to share about moving beyond leverage and into personal scale. And I think it's really appropriate like this tonight, because the thing that we all have in common is the thing that we hear maybe to network, if you're new or relatively new and you're waiting for that paradigm shift to occur, to what we're calling building a network. So I'm going to expose that this evening. I'm going to talk about the difference between leverage and personal scale and package it up to the thing we have in common, because we're all in different industries, right? I can't just preach on one industry or one area. Let's talk generally what we're here for, and we'll tie it all together for personal scale. Does that sound like a plan?
Yep. Awesome.
Happy days. So, leverage. We hear about that a lot, don't we? It's a common use. Its usage is familiar. Its usage is apparent in nearly all corporate environments, in nearly every business environment, in things that we try to do. Leverage is very much a buzzword, but it's also an instruction. It's also a framework of thinking. It can be a whole lot of things, but it's a really smart way to live, with leverage being front of mind. And there's a great example of leverage. You think of that fulcrum, that lever, right, with that real long crowbar, and you're trying to shift the boulder. We've all remember this from school, and you got to learn about fulcrums. And you put the rock from the crowbar, and you try to lever that up, right? But depending on where that fulcrum is, where that rock is positioned, or the lever is positioned, in order to wedge that boulder out of the way, you got different results. And you'd found that the longer the lever you had, you could apply a less effort to that and get a multiplied effort at the other end to shift the boulder. Do you all remember that experiment? You all did some version of that, right? And so it's a really good analogy, and we put that into our own businesses. We put that into all the things we do. We upskill ourselves. We train ourselves, till the cows come home, get qualified out of the wazoo. We're just really extremely good at learning how to put the right amount of work onto that pole and leverage it to get a result. And we go, how good am I? Right? I've got this qualification. I've got this type of experience. I've done this. I've achieved that. See that building? Jumped over that in a single bound. And so therefore the amount of work I've got to apply on this end of the lever, right, I can move massive boulders, and we all feel great. The challenge with that is that it's not scalable. It's not a scalable solution. Is that you are forever the one that's got to apply the work to that lever. And until we think about how do we get more people applying more effort to more levers, and that effort is not at the expense of me. That effort is scalable. That effort is more people applying more effort to more levers where I'm not there having to do it. Now we're talking scalability. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so the challenge with, and as I'll unpack tonight, the challenge with and hopefully this talk remains decent enough to be a recording, we want to shift the paradigms of people to really get the difference between network building and networking, right? And so networking, you can get a lot of leverage out of that, can't you? You can walk into an environment and you can meet 40, 50, 60, 1,000 people, whatever it is, right? You can meet them and you can leverage that environment to get a card, to get the connection that you've been trying to chase down or hunt down or stalk, whatever you do, to get that person. You finally got them and you've leveraged an event, or somebody's introduced you, right? You've got that. What about the referral? I mean, isn't the referral the goose that laid the golden egg, right? Someone who referred you into someone else. One of the tragedies of a space like this is people go, networking event, building a network, I get more people collaborating, more people opening doors. Great, yep, well I can get that in another environment too. And you can. Absolutely you can. You can get plenty of referrals from plenty of environments if you are good at what you do and you're great with people and you find good people. Referrals should not be a problem. They shouldn't be a problem. What's a problem is scale, because every time you want more referrals, you've got to go back, it's wash, rinse and repeat, right? So that's why this process around developing personal scale is the thing that can make the difference for you when it comes to finding more purposeful, on-point, deliberate conversations, expanding your network, expanding your horizons, and doing it in a way that you get more people applying more work to more levers to move more boulders without your direct input. Does that make sense? You can catch that picture? Beautiful. So, I had some definitions here of leverage. I've said that. What about scalability? So, scalability is the capability of a system, network or process to handle a growing amount of work, or its potential to be enlarged to accommodate that growth. Right? And hopefully you can see from that leveraged pictures what we're trying to achieve, right? What we should be trying to achieve when it comes to the thing we have in common of building a network. See, when you've got to apply your own effort to that lever, it's a bit akin to most business models, or even most professionals. As good as I got as a personal trainer, I had to apply X amount of work. As good as I got as a lawyer, I'm not a personal trainer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm trying to give an example, right? As good as I get as a lawyer, though if I want to make more money, I got to apply, but I get more qualifications, I get more experience, I get part of more projects, I do all sorts of wonderful things, even get my own radio talk show or whatever it might be to get more leverage. I've still got to apply the work to that to get a result. Nothing wrong with that, but just understand there's a difference between being able to upskill yourself to make you more useful, but no matter what you do in the world of leverage, it's leveraged by you, the efforts of one. And this is the problem I'm trying to uncover with that traditional networking approach. And most business models work that way. No dramas, but you've got to change the model, haven't you, if you want scalability. I mean, it's just not about being the best doctor. Right? Some marketer will go in and tell the doctor's surgery who's got a team of 6 doctors in there perhaps and tell them, you know what you should do, while they're here, the patients are here, get them the flu shot as well, right? Promote that. Promote a vitamin C shot. We're coming into winter, right? And they do those things because you're leveraging that 3 minutes and 42 seconds you get with a doctor, right? You're leveraging the 20, whatever your doctor is, the 20 minutes that you get with them. They're doing other things whilst you're in there that are in your best interest, but they're trying to change their model. But do you get, no matter how much they change the model, they can leverage those few minutes as much as they like, but it's not solving the problem of scalability. You get what I'm saying? If you had to pay more people, as in pay more doctors to be part of that surgery, is that scalable? No, not really. It's a really poor scalable model. Because you think of it, we're trying to increase revenue, right? And there's a cost to doing business. And if the increases of if the scale of increasing the cost to turn over that revenue escalates at the same rate as the revenue, you haven't changed the margin at all, have you? You want to increase the revenue and have the costs of business not deviate too much at all. And when you can figure that bit out, you now got scalability, right? And if you have to employ more people to do that, can you see why having a big business with 1,000 employees may not be the answer to getting some scalability in your business, right? Or in your life, or we're talking here tonight. With personal scalability. The other day I was, as I do each day, I like to make coffee at home. And I use the real machine, not those pod things, right, that the whales choke on and the dolphins choke on, not those ones. I use the real deal. So those coffee lovers out there, just raise your hands. The real deal, not the pod ones. Great, we can have a meeting after this meeting about the appreciation of real coffee. But it's interesting, you're there, you're making, this is what, I don't know if this could just be me, but you make the coffee and you grind the beans and you try to get the canister into the jar, you're filling that up, right, into the jar, and then you get that into the gun. And somewhere along the line, you're bound to spill something, that's frustrating. And you eventually pack it down right, you tamper it right, you put it in the machine. You go, oh, I forgot to get the milk. Oh, hang on, I didn't even turn the thing on to heat up. You turn that, you heat it up, you go walk over to the fridge, you get the milk out. There's this much milk left in it. So go into the pantry where the spare milks are, because we use cartons of the soy milks and things. So we got a stock of them in the pantry. You go out and you replace, you get the other spare cold one out of the fridge, you replace that. You eventually, that's right, I was going to have avocado and toast for breakfast. So you've got to start that process, right? And you do, like in it, stop, start. If I had a pedometer on at the time or a Fitbit or something, you'd be doing 1,000 steps just to make the coffee, and it's this extremely inefficient process. And I laugh at myself because A, I could never own a cafe, but B, I'm not set up to do so, right? So I can kind of calm down on the pressure on myself here and just enjoy it for what it is, right? And one of the reasons I commit to this type of machine is that because I do try as I'm making a coffee just to stop thinking for that moment in time. It's probably hence all my problems when I make it, right? But I do try just to stop thinking about stuff and just settle the brain and be with me at that moment. Does that make sense? So I like that ritual of making coffee, right? And so that's probably what it is for me, and the product tastes good at the end of the day. So, but can you imagine then you experience that with coffee, and you sit down with your significant other and you go, honey, I've thought this through, and I've had many challenges making coffee. Mess here, mess there, you've seen the granules spread over the kitchen floor, blah, blah, blah. And now I've got challenges with trying to make this work, but I figured out if we turn this into a commercial kitchen, right? And we get a better machine with better processes and all this, I'm going to make a better coffee, right? And you can imagine that what a dumb line of thought that is, right? It's not, I don't need scale in that area of my life, do I? Right? It needs purpose, but I don't need scale in that portion of my life. It would be a silly conversation to have that with your significant other, right? But the point there is to recognise that whilst it's okay not to have everything perfect and everything in line and everything running smoothly, that there are some areas of your life where you really want to stop and consider where you want scale. If you want a cafe, it's unwise to have that machine in your cafe, right? You can get that. That's not rocket science. Everyone, you can intuitively, or think about it now, you can come to that conclusion very quickly, right? But if you're planning to make 1 to 2 coffees a day, right, that's perfectly fine, right, or 6 coffees a day. But if you're planning to run a business out of it, you need see these other layers of complexity come into it, and these other solutions come into it, these other ideas come into making sure you can produce 1,000 of them a day because your livelihood depends on it. So if you were, not the home barista but the real barista, you would be concerned about scale when it comes to the process even of making the coffee. Like, you'd have the machine beside the correct machine. You'd make sure that this is interesting. I think it is. Just smile anyway and entertain me. But you've got the machine there, and if you've ever wandered behind the scenes of a renowned coffee chain or branch, it's like everything is there, right? There is not a wasted step involved. There is not a turn that doesn't mean something. It is all deliberate, because the wasted time in going to get something or to refill something or to do things manually, you multiply that by X amount of potential at the end of the day. You've lost 100 coffees. You've lost 1,000 a week. You've lost 52,000 of them in a year. That adds up, right? So you need that. You need to consider all aspects of the process, because there's lots of wastage in a process if you're not interested in scale. But if you are interested in scale, you've got to consider all those components. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So I believe when it comes to thinking of scale, there are barriers which we put in front of ourselves, or just the environment in which we've educated ourselves or grown up in, or the environment we work in, puts these barriers in our mind. First of all, we generally think that scale is only important to business. We think that scale is in the realm of a commercial outcome. We think that scale is directly, like there's all these other buzzwords around scale, around economies of scale, leverage, running lean, and all the programs around running lean, all these things that you attribute to a business with scale. So to apply that to your personal life or the activity you invest your time in, particularly that part, you invest your personal time in, you don't normally think of scale in something you're investing your time in. True? Unless it's directly related to a business. In a way, is it really our fault? Well, we're not taught that. We're not taught about how economies of scale, considerations of input and output, leverage, lean practices, efficiencies, they are important to us as individuals as well. But nobody's ever correlated the two. So maybe that's not our fault. Maybe that's just the environment that we're in. Thanks, mate. So I was thinking of an example of that, and when you watch TV, you notice that if they're selling a coffee machine, maybe one of those pod scenarios, they don't advertise to you the fact that you get to save 7 seconds each time you make a coffee, right? Because it's not important in that world in your own home environment, right? But if they were to make those commercial, they would need to be advertising and promoting or marketing on that, because leverage on scalability is important in that environment. But they don't do it if you think this through, and this is an interesting thought process. So you ever play those games with yourselves, you think ridiculous examples through to find out where the point it is what actually makes them ridiculous? And I think the point that makes this ridiculous around why wouldn't they advertise to you about saving 7 seconds at home is because it makes no difference on a level of 1. But if you had somehow, communities aren't designed to work at the moment. Communities aren't designed to work in alignment. It's not as if you and your neighbours and your whole suburb can pile up your 7 seconds together and now put it towards a good cause, right? Because there's no alignment there. But if it was in an office situation where people were spending 5 minutes hanging around talking gas bag, and that spreads out into 15 minutes because of the time it takes to make coffee, can you see that putting in a different type of coffee machine is going to save time on scale? It makes sense. So most communities aren't designed with that scalability in mind, or most households aren't, or individuals aren't either, right? So wouldn't it be great if you could design your own community with purpose in mind, right? With scalability in mind. And the thing we've all got in common here this evening is this idea of going out to network. And there's a couple of videos you can get, or some content you can get from a room such as this, from the Connect Collaborative, that explains quite clearly around the differences between networking and network building. So I won't spoil those or stand on the territory of that, but I will go through with you some highlights in relation to personal scale why normal networking won't work. Normal networking is when you're going out to grab a coffee with somebody, and we heard a hint of this earlier. And when you go out to grab a coffee with somebody, it's an investment of time. And at the very best it can do is yield a result times 1, right? So it's an expensive time, process, weak strategy. The other problem that we have with going out and actually trying to network normally is that that actual process is not geared for growth. And same thing with a normal environment when you try to network with several people in the room. Maybe there's 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 people in the room. It's not geared to do anything more than something there and then at that moment in time. There is no leverage, there is no scalability for your time in an environment like that. So what we wanted to do in a space like this is, I often get asked this, and it irritates me, plus it also has woken me up to a better job we could do with sharing the real difference that happens in a room like this. And the real difference is not the referrals. That happens, is great. The real difference is not the collaborative environment. It happens, but that's not the major difference, right? The major difference is not that there's great speakers or there's relevant content. It happens, but it's not the real difference, right? The real difference is because this environment gives personal scale. Because back to that leveraged example, I don't want to be the one that's got to apply, even with all my experience and all my degrees and all my X, Y, Z's, I don't want to be the one that's got to apply leverage to the 10 levers. I want others to apply leverage to those levers so I get scalability. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And in an environment like this, people are encouraged. We know that when people with goals, thanks very much, that with people with goals, that they have, we know that they know, here's where I am, this is where I need to be, and I need to be able to surround myself with more people. And you can try to do that on your own, and you'll get a very predictable, unlikable result. Or you can do it as a collaborative. You can actually align within the strategy. You can align in such a way that it leverages and scales your time, and that's what happens in an environment like this. Is the contacts I bring in each week are added value to because you and you bring your contacts in this week, and a crowd draws a crowd. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And if our environment here is of one where we're encouraged, if it's worthwhile, to meet others here and have them come into this environment. Why? Because the statistical chances of them actually being the one you need are buckleys to none. Mm-hmm. But if you had time within a relationship, could they not become or lead you to the one? All right, open the door to the one, open the door to the one. And you can't do that on your own. You need a culture to help you with that. I think this is about seven years ago. every time an election comes around, the government's threatened to do something or make a change, right? And in this particular election year, federal election year, there was the government at the time was saying we're going to make, or the competing government was saying we'll make some changes to the FBT legislation, right? And that directly impacted a client of mine at the time if there were changes to the FBT rulings, this would mean it would greatly affect their business in a very significant way. Like 50% of it wiped out because it just makes life too hard for them, right? Or for their product. And this was being spruiked as the election year is winding up. So I just had a few months to find a solution. And what I did, and the message here is I did this on my own. This is the fail part. I did this on my own. I was thinking through, like, who are the current clients? Who are the contacts that I resonate well with? Who are the ones that the marketplace that I'm looking for? And typically, for me at that time, it was around that 200 to 500 employee size business, right? And so I thought, who else is in touch with that? And I got some brainstorming along. And I thought, well, what I need is finance solutions would work within that space. I felt like, or commercial finance. I felt like there'd be a legal requirement for businesses of that size. I feel like as a HR, they're on that cusp of having an outsourced HR or the dedicated HR. I felt there's some organisations in there that would do that. I felt like there was learning management systems and LMS, learning management systems and IT systems. And I thought these are the type of services who I'm actually talking to clients that are people anyway that they're talking to. I mean, surely if we get along, there's a way to cross-pollinate. This is not rocket science. So I jumped on LinkedIn, or I went to networking events, and I wanted to meet these types of people. And so I met them, and then you do the obligatory, you walk away with 1,000 cards, but you know why you got 1,000 cards, right? It's because everyone's figured out they give you a card, so they get your contact details, now they can hound you, right? So you get 1,000 cards, it means you're a victim to 1,000 people, right? Potentially. Anyway, you get the cards and you make contact, right? Give the card and you make contact. And cut a long story short, after about 3.5, 4 months worth of effort, I met them again. I had a coffee with them, and the coffee was to propose the idea of, hey, I'm fishing in the same ponds you're fishing. Surely if we figure out what each other's doing, that surely we could help each other out in some way, shape or form. And I did that, I can't remember how many times, but I boiled it down to about 9 people that I really resonated with. That was through meeting number 1, meeting number 2, and eventually, like the carrot at the end of all this was I was saying, we're going to get together and introduce to the others I'm having this same conversation with, right? And they're going, well, if you're being this strict with me, then you're being this strict with those other 8, therefore these are people I want to meet because clearly they're on the same page as you, right? That was what I thought they were thinking. So we go and meet. We met at a coffee shop in Jindalee. And we got around to this was all an idea to find more business ultimately for my client, right, who's getting impacted by this FBT or potential this FBT decision. Anyway, we met, they got on like a house on fire, and the thing was is that the crux of this, like the crux in normal networking, is that I'm just meeting you because, to be honest, I want you to open up the door to your network. I'm going to pretend I like you, I'm going to say all the right things, I just want you to open up the door. And so we're all playing this game, right? And you're trying to be polite and you're playing this game and you think it's like 3.5 months worth of effort. And I did know at that time that, you know what, humans being humans, they're all going, righto, this Mexican standoff of, right, so we're supposed to start referring, right? Who's going to go first? Yeah. And I knew that was going to be the case. Look, I'll go first. Like, I'll introduce you to my network. And I was going along to networking functions and breakfasts, and I had a great list of contacts and so forth, and people I could very happily introduce them to, and clients, customers of years gone by. Like, I kept in touch with all of them. And so I was able to make the introductions because we're all doing this, hey, who's going to go first? Well, I'll go first. Like, I started this darn thing. Like, it only makes sense that I go first. And if I get shot, then I guess you're not going to follow me, but we'll figure it out together, shall we? So I did that. And what happened was what I did that entire, this is the point, I did that entire process, which by the way amounted to nearly bugger all. Right? Actually, half of bugger all, to be honest. I did that entire process off the back of just myself and one person trying to influence them, one person trying to paint the vision, one person and on top of that, they've got their own strategies of finding new contacts, which they're only doing for them. They've never had any inkling of finding anything for me along the way, right? It's because I can't filter them well enough on my own. I'm missing this massive component of scalability. You need a culture, you need an environment, you need a system, you need a process, which is the point, to make that happen. People don't refer you. But my whole business is relied upon the word of mouth. Yeah, that's leverage. Right? We're talking scalability. People don't help you with scalability. That's the bit to write down or tattoo on the back of your eyelids. They don't. What you need, I'll get off my high horse. What you need is an environment that is actually a systemised process that will allow you to open the doors and them to open the doors in a safe, aligned way of making that happen. And now all of a sudden we start to get into realms of scalability when it comes to finding new contacts and new relationships. Because if you follow the bouncing ball, if you come along and you invite somebody else, and that person invites somebody else, and eventually invites somebody else, that could take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, could take 4 months, I don't know. But how much work did I have to do for that to happen? Yeah. Right? We want this to happen, don't we? We want that referral process to happen because I want more meaningful, purposeful, on-point conversations. I'm confident in what I can deliver. I know the outcome of the amount of conversations I have or the conversations I need to get a result, right? I'm not worried about that. I just need more conversations. And I can't do that many coffees, right? You can't get work done. But how much work did I have to do in order to have that conversation? Now, you might open the door to somebody else, and I think that's the one, but the door's opened over here, right? You can't do that on your own. I can't spend enough time with someone to make that happen. Are you getting the point?
Yeah.
And when it comes to networking, it's one-dimensional. It serves only you.
Yeah.
When it comes to network building, it's serving others, and others know they need to be able to surround themselves with the right people. You need to do that in an environment, in a way, in an aligned process that gives you time, that gives you the ability to open up the door, to build a relationship, to someone else to open up the door to you, because you're going to add value into them, so that person's opening the door for the contact they really want. Does that make sense? This is the aligned, scalable process. So just where I'll finish up is that there's some... If you were here the last few weeks, you would have heard some wonderful examples, some successful attempts at doing this, right? Building a network first. One of the greatest examples is Laura. Now, Laura's in the room. Hold your hand up, Laura. If you haven't met Laura, I'd recommend that you do, because it's interesting that normally people would look at a profile such as Laura's in years gone by and go, well, I'm not quite sure of the commercial value there, because Laura deals with, she's got the ear of some great decision makers, but at that time a few years ago, is that she would have been pigeonholed as an executive assistant or administrative assistant in some way, kind of form. I mean, I'll tell you what, that is the biggest mistake you'll ever make, putting her in that box. It is a really unwise, immature, one-dimensional, thinking of leverage, no use to me, type of approach, right? The smart thing that's happened is Laura's been heavily engaged in particularly the last 12 months here. We've been here about 12 months now, I think it is, close to that. Bringing contacts in, right? Opening up the doors for other contacts. She's got the connections already. And what she decided to do was to develop that into a partnership in stockbroking, right? She found the guy who could actually get results as a stockbroker. Fancy that, right? He's no good at talking to people. Stereotypes, but it was true in that instance. Or not good for new conversations. Laura is amazing at new conversations. And it's her, plus this growing network, plus what's happening in Sydney, plus what's about to happen in Melbourne, plus what's happening in international locations, is with the reach that she has. You don't just get her, right? There is scale in getting her. Therefore, the business she gets trusted in this environment. There's people go to her for either connections or information. She can lead them to the source, right? That's completely that's a leverage way to go, but it's not traditional leverage. That comes with scale, right? Because Laura's the one in the business model, is the one collecting the margin on everything. Someone else is doing the work. Do you get that?
Yes.
Right. That's a great example. Another great example, if you heard from Brendan, I mean, that talk is up there and you're able to be messaged out to people, but Brendan spent a long time in this process just figuring out where the value proposition is. And the moment the penny dropped where he figured out, you know what, I need to contact new people, and his industry of solar is that he could just go, hey, do you need solar, do you need solar, do you need solar? And the stats are, it's a waste of time, right? Struggling business model. But when he was able to just network build and find out, so what are you looking for, what are you here for, what are you trying to achieve over time? I mean, it's not just about, surely it just can't be about the gig you're doing now. You've got a bigger purpose, right? Like you got, or a bigger cause, or you don't want to do that for the whole rest of your life. He's nicer than this, right? I'm summarising the conversations. But you figure out, no, there's a side, you go, I really want to start a foundation. No, I really want to get into being a journalist. I really want to get into this. So this is about paying the bills right now, whatever that might be, right? And he's able to add value to people like that. And over time, who's adding value, become known, and it can become trusted. And there's a few people that go, well, you do solar, right? So, okay, well, let's use you. Actually, I used Brendan. He was fantastic. Oh, I did too. And the leverage for him is that he becomes known and are trusted in that environment. That's leverage. But where the scalability comes in is that as the room multiplies, as the room doubles, the amount of on-point, purpose, deliberate conversations that he gets scales with that. Does that make sense? And therein lies the difference. It is really unwise to bundle networking leverage into the same basket as personal scale network building. Okay? So there's plenty more examples of that, but that's where I might park it for this evening. I would encourage you to give yourself the time and the space to make yourself a coffee, right? Give yourself the time and the space at home to marinate in the idea of not just coming to an event, whether you stay here or go elsewhere, like, it doesn't matter, but you need to figure out you need scalability in your time. And if it comes with paying people, because that's how most people get leverage, I'll pay for 10 employees, they can do 10 times the amount of work. Yeah, but you've just increased your cost by the same amount too. How does that get you like real results, right? You need to go about things in another way. And so make yourself a coffee. Figure out, talk to some of the collaborators in here. The person who reached out to you to build a relationship in order to potentially build a network alongside you. This is leverage. It's hubs building alongside hubs building alongside hubs. And we've got a process where we can empower and multiply and scale the sucker, right? Nobody is doing this. And whilst we'd love to be able to run this as a business and talk about how profitable business is, the fact that's not true at all. The real thing is that this is the beast that feeds other beasts. And that's where we want it to be. It feeds all the beasts for those who collaborate and align and can communicate and connect and bring other new contacts in. It's the currency we all have in common, the ability to reach out into the unknown. Find a contact of whom we do not yet know. Bring them into the known. But don't do it on your own. Bring them into the known, into your backyard, where you'll have a much better chance of a relationship or a communication or an insight having a chance.